This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting series of episodes that we are covering on this topic of environment and sustainability. It's been a while since we have done any series of episodes specifically on this topic. I know last year we did with Afonso, and also we also did another episode on environment and sustainability later on. And then finally, we ended up talking about climate change in the in-person event that we did with UNSW founders as well on building a better Australia. And we talked about building a better Australia from a sustainability point of view. So Alex is our speaker for today. He's the founder of econome, and they're helping people transition their job into the climate economy. Met him a few days ago. I had a good chat with him when we were running together for the Saturday morning run. He introduced me to himself, and he just started something of his own. I thought that's a great opportunity for me to connect with him. And then we ended up inviting him to this episode. So, Alex, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure thing, Saurabh. And thanks for having me both, Saurabh and George. It's great to be here. Very excited to be on your podcast. Love what you guys are doing and bringing attention to people's stories around the world. So hi everyone, my name's Alex. I'm the founder of econome. As Saurabh said, we help people transition into working in the climate economy through a reskilling pathway. So we've got a program called the Climate Stream, which is sort of a 5-week intensive reskilling process through project-based learning. And then we provide sort of 6 months worth of support to help you find the right job and the right role for you in the climate economy. So really passionate about workforce development, specifically workforce development in helping us build a more resilient and climate-focused economy. Geek out and nerd out a little bit on like learning design and thinking about how we can make learning experiences a fun and engaging sort of thing to be doing.
Absolutely, that's so exciting, isn't it? So, what are some of the really exciting opportunities for people, according to you? You know, for people like me who are in different kind of a zone, we are in technology sales, or somebody who is working on something else, and they might be interested to enter into climate space. What kind of opportunities do you see in 2024 for people? We can talk about Australia in specific, not talking about globally, if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the exciting thing. Like, it is a global opportunity working in climate. I don't know if you guys have checked out the LinkedIn Global Green Skills Report, but they put out an annual report each year, sort of detailing the development of green skills and the increasing demand for people to have green skills. But right now, only 1 in about 8 workers globally possesses green skills. So there's a huge gap in the workforce, to upskill people in having green skills. And my operating thesis is sort of that climate and sustainability, similar to technology, is a horizontal across every single industry. So it doesn't matter what industry you're working in, and it doesn't matter what you're doing for work, you will be impacted by the climate, whether or not you like it. And we're already seeing that in the way that people are living, and we're having to develop our economies to be far more resilient and reactive to the changes in climate. There's a huge gap, and there's a huge talent shortage that exists. And whilst that is like growing, which is definitely promising and exciting, there's a lot of work to do. And the report I mentioned, the Global Green Skills Report, mostly covered energy, transportation, and finance, because they're probably the most documented areas that people can transition into working in. Obviously, energy is like crucial, securing our national grids and moving towards new renewable forms of energy is sort of priority number 1. And then, transport sort of is typically second to that. It's very easy for us to have a personal relationship to transport with our cars and focusing more on developing electric vehicles. But I was having a conversation with someone that worked in climate finance last week, and he said that 85% of our financing globally is going towards energy and transport solutions, but some of our largest carbon emitters are from like heavy intensive processes like creating steel and creating concrete. And so I think they're like sort of currently underfinanced, underexplored opportunities to create careers in, and definitely need to have a little bit more of a focus on into the future. There's some cool companies doing some really exciting things, creating more sustainable forms of concrete and steel. One I'll mention is H2 Green Steel. Definitely check it out. They're sort of doing a first of their kind project in developing new sustainable forms of steel. But yeah, just to sort of tie it back, opportunity exists across the whole economy, across all industries and sectors in climate. And I think, becomes a bit of a game of identifying what are the specific climate skills that you can develop and you can focus on that align with your profession, so that you can sort of, I guess, more or less capitalize on that transition. Not that we're in necessarily the business of capitalization in the green economy, but I do think you need to be prepared for the shift that we're currently going through.
I've got another question for you, but before that, I want to loop in George as well into this conversation. So, George has got an enormous network through BNI, and we've been talking a lot about climate change last year as well. One of the biggest things that I know George always talks about is we are kind of thinking about climate change. We are setting targets for climate change, but by doing so, we sometimes disrupt the current generation's needs and their day-to-day life. How can we make sure that we are meeting the needs of the future generation? We are taking steps towards climate change, but we then set realistic targets, don't set unrealistic targets, and then end up achieving nothing. But George, do you want to add on to that and ask any questions to Alex?
Thank you very much for that, Sarab, and some interesting stuff there, Alex. So one of the things that I'm floating around in my head at the moment, Alex, is a number of years ago, I was involved with a church's football association. And the whole executive of that church's football association had to come from a church, had to swear allegiance to the Lord and all that. I happen to believe in God, so this is not because I'm a non-believer. And anybody that wasn't prepared to say that I believe in God and I'm a Christian could not be on that committee. There is a chap who, in a particular instance, he declared that he actually was an atheist. And so they declined to have him on there from the very beginning, but he eventually became a member, and he has revolutionized many aspects of that competition. And personally, I think he has saved that competition from disappearing out of the system. So when you now talk about people coming into the green space and the climate space, coming from the other side, is it a necessity, in your opinion, that they have to be Greta Thunberg or somebody like that, or can it just be somebody that is aware of the needs and then says, well, I'd like to be part of this new idea? So they're not a radical, they're not a fanatical, but they have a consciousness of where we are to where we need to be.
Yeah, great question, George, and thanks for raising that. And yeah, no, I'm personally sort of an optimist, but also a realist. And I don't think there's any necessity for people to be like a radical sort of greenie or, super into the environment in order to be working in climate by any means necessary. I think, whether people like it or not, in the next sort of 10 years, um, people are going to have to be forced to reskill to transition into more sustainable forms of employment and industry. To give a simple example, coal mines are beginning to be closed by, one of our largest energy providers, AGL, so that they can reinvest capital back into renewable forms of energy. And those coal workers that were working there previously, they're going to need to move somewhere else, and they're going to have to reskill in order to keep their employment. And a lot of the skills that they currently have are transferable, so it's not all doom and gloom as to which a lot of the conservative parties will typically make it out to be. It's just sort of augmenting their current skill sets. To use an analogy in the tech sector, it's probably similar to how AI is currently disrupting the way that people work on a day-to-day basis. Whether or not you like it, you probably need to use AI to some degree in order to sort of stay competitive in the market and take advantage of what's happening at a technological level. Climate change is going to get rapidly, sort of like exponentially impactful on our communities and the way that we as a species are able to be resilient. So our hands eventually going to be forced. It's just, I think, a matter of deciding, when you want to sort of jump on the wave and make that transition. And I think, the climate community is a broad church, and sort of welcomes people from all different industries and parties. So I think that it's a great point, because people that are in climate activism like Greta Thunberg do great work in bringing awareness and attention to the issues that we're facing as a society. But I kind of think that everyone who's relatively tuned in and doesn't put their head in the sand realizes the environment's changing, things are happening. It's about now adopting a realist mindset to think about how can we actually take advantage of this opportunity in time so that we're not left behind.
So for me, if I'm a great strategist for an oil company, provided I'm not just product central, so I'm only that because I know about oil and nothing else. If I actually understand strategy, then whatever I apply that skill to, that skill set, can be of benefit. Now, I could apply that to water, I could apply that to climate, I could apply that to education. If you're a strategist by nature, you're a strategist. And I don't necessarily think that we all have to come from the same church to be able to sing out of the same hymn book. And I actually think diversity, by having people that are not fanatical and radical, will actually help the concept and help the movement a lot better, because they may come up with an idea. The idealist will say, "Oh yes, we'll do that tomorrow," where it's just not logical to think you're going to move that fast. So I think whenever you get diversity in anything, that's a benefit. And this is no different to me. You want diversity of opinion.
100%. And I think a current debate that I won't profess to being deep into, that's happening sort of in the transition towards a more climate resilient energy grid, is what are our core energy sources going to be in the interim, where sort of wind or solar is potentially not incredibly energy efficient or capable of generating the amount of energy that we need. Is there a use case for nuclear? Is there a use case for like green hydrogen? we need to have these active debates and actively discuss what are our sources of energy as we go through our transition, do that in a robust manner so that we make the right decisions and don't just prioritize solutions that are incredibly future focused. You know, I'm not, as I said, I won't profess to being an expert, but you know, solar and wind needs a lot more upfront investment in order to sort of like build the infrastructure and build the capability that a lot of the time, you know, the political will isn't there. In the interim, potentially green hydrogen is a solution. These are conversations and discussions that need to happen from people with differing opinions so that we can land on the best solution at different points in the journey of moving towards a more climate resilient economy.
So coming back to you and what you actually do, I'm currently a sales manager, or I'm an engineer, or I'm whatever I am in the non-green world, the non-climate space world of business. What's my journey when I come to your company? What is it that econome does for me, or how does it work? So the what and the how. And we already understand the why.
Yeah, for sure. So what we do is we will put you in a cohort of up to 10 people. And the purpose of limiting and capping it at 10 is to sort of recreate and simulate the world of work. Like, you know, typically when you're working, you may have a project that has, you know, hundreds of people executing on it, but you won't really be dealing with more than 10 other people in your sort of vicinity. And so we want to recreate that as best as possible. And based upon the individual skill sets that you have, we'll match you with a cohort that's complementary to your individual skill sets and provide you a simulated industry project to work on over the course of 5 weeks. So our upcoming cohort is working on putting together a decarbonisation strategy of a metal refinery within an industrial precinct. And they need to make recommendations on how we actually going to decarbonise this metal refinery through improving, you know, energy efficiency, looking at more renewable forms of energy, getting relevant climate financing in order to kind of move us through this process. And that intensive 5-week project gives us an opportunity to evaluate your core skill sets and competencies. So we've got a competency framework called the Climate Competency Framework, which we evaluate each individual on throughout the duration of the 5-week project. So they get a sense of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, so that they know how to market themselves to prospective employers, but also so that they know what they need to work on. And that's done in combination with a bunch of the live sessions that they participate on, but also at the end of the project, they present to an industry panel and they're sort of finally assessed there. And then once that 5 weeks is completed, they've been assessed on the using the Climate Competency Framework. We then provide 6 months worth of support to coach you in figuring out how to market yourself best, running mock interviews, providing warm introductions to people in our network that we think would be well suited for you to work with. And then at the completion of that 6 months, you should have a job. If you don't, we'll refund you the cost of participation. You know, our priority is making sure people that are ready for the transition into the climate economy and dedicated to it are able to sort of, you know, meet that.
And so you're helping me transition and you're helping me do all of this. Where's the other side of that? Who are you connected with to be able to get me then employment? So have you got a group of organisations / companies that are saying, okay, we're looking for this, or do you find a candidate, work the candidate, and then place the candidate?
Yeah, so right now we find the candidate, work with the candidate, place the candidate. In time, as we kind of move into more sort of strategic workforce mapping and planning and sort of getting clearer on what the particular job corridors are, then we will be consulting deeply with industry councils with prospective employers that have just gone through large financing rounds in order to understand, where their capabilities are lacking and what they need sort of plugged in. We're not at that stage yet. For us, those job corridors aren't completely well defined. So we're looking to define those job corridors over the next sort of 12 to 24 months so that we can get greater clarity on where individuals are going, where individuals can go specifically based upon their skill sets. And we're looking at, using software in order to help people map those pathways for themselves. But for right now, we have a network of sort of climate recruiters that have been in the space for the last 5 to 10 years that we work with, as well as climate sort of scale ups and startups in the space that are looking for new employers. So it's a combination of those two at the moment: climate recruiters and climate scale ups and startups in our network. But as time goes on, that strategic workforce planning and development of specific job corridors based upon skill sets is definitely a priority for us.
And how do you find those candidates at the moment, or how do they find you?
Just largely through word of mouth at the moment. So they find us through LinkedIn, through networking events, through social media. It's pretty much a combination of those three factors right now. But we're looking to sort of connect with a bunch of different people in the industry to bring attention to opportunities in climate employment, but also climate causes and climate advocacy work. Last year, we ran a program for free called Cop That, which was designed to equip people with skills in climate advocacy through drawing attention to sort of, I guess, a few of the problems with COP28 being hosted in the UAE and some of the questionable statements that the president was saying. And they use those sort of climate advocacy skills in order to put together marketing campaigns for climate tech scale-ups and startups, and help them take the messaging that was coming out of COP28 and translate that into action to help further their initiatives. So climate advocacy and climate awareness is a big sort of component, I think, of, I guess, our marketing strategy and our communications.
So, Alex, have you also focused on doing any kind of partnerships with the universities and industries in Australia?
Yeah, we're actively nurturing and developing partnerships where we can. We currently have a partnership with Green Jobs Network, which is the largest green jobs board online in the US. We currently got an active partnership with Greenfluence, who brings awareness to the different types of green jobs that are available to you through a podcast, but also in partnership with us through a number of education initiatives. And we're actively, looking to grow our partnership network. I think, in the sort of foreseeable future and more immediate focus, we're looking to partner with industry councils, people like the Clean Energy Council, the Energy Efficiency Council, the ARENA, different organizations like this, to understand from their perspective what are the workforce capability gaps, where are they seeing skill shortages, and how can we help plug those gaps and provide that uplift in capability for people to have a smoother transition into the green economy.
And how has that been received, Alex? So when you are going out to the market, there are all kinds of people. I was talking to George when he met me on Friday, and he was talking about this 25% phenomena, which is a different topic for sure. But what he was talking to me is like, not everyone loves what you do, not everyone loves you as a person. So there are always some people who will be opposing your idea, or will be asking you a lot of questions, who will be doubting you, and who will be creating a doubt in your mind as well, whether I'm doing the right thing or not, and things like that. How do you kind of tackle that as a founder? Because that can be a good thing for other founders to listen to as well.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great question, Saurabh. It's one that you've kind of constantly got to wrestle with as a founder. I think for me, this is a journey that I've been on for the past sort of 4 years. I definitely haven't rushed into it. And I would definitely sort of advocate for, you know, taking your time with things and not rushing into things. I think a lot of the time in entrepreneurship, people are sold this like dream of being able to work your own hours, work on your own time, be doing what you're passionate about 100% of the time, and having high conviction in what you're doing at all times. That certainly wasn't the case for me. I actually didn't even realize I was an entrepreneur until someone told me that I was. It wasn't like taught at university. When I was at university, I was just sort of trying to get initiatives up off the ground that I was passionate about and wanted to work in. And it was economy has been a side hustle for me for the past 4 years whilst I've had a full-time job. And I've just recently made the transition into full-time work. And I probably wasn't like completely ready for that jump, but I knew that it was time, like it was going to be sort of now or never. And I think that's just like an instinctual, intrinsic feeling. You'll feel at one point on your entrepreneurial journey, and you'll know that it's time, it's go time now, and I've got to make it work. There's definitely an element of sort of like grit and resolve that you have to develop over time to know, when it's a little bit difficult and you're at a crossroads moment, you are well equipped and have the skill sets to be able to deal with, whatever that sort of situation is. That's something I think you need to develop over time through having difficult conversations, through having people doubt with you, through engaging with people that doubt with you, and being curious and asking them questions to better understand, where they're coming from and why they may have doubts, because people may have doubts in you for very, strong, sound reasons. And you need to be open to receiving that and taking that on board and not taking it personally. I think a lot of the time, we struggle to disassociate, feedback and criticism from, our own personal sense of self. You've got to realize that your ideas are not you; they're an extension of you. And as soon as you put them out into the world, they're no longer yours. They're everyone's, and sort of like up there for the taking. So I think, building personal resilience through experimentation over extended periods of time is step number one. That's what you've got to be able to do. And then second, like, separating criticism from your own personal sense of self and welcoming it whenever you can.
That's great. That's a really great advice, Alex, because it's a journey where a lot of founders don't talk about so openly. Everybody talks about their success. We have raised this much of money. But actually, when you are down and you are alone in that journey, sometimes you might feel disappointed. Sometimes you might get affected by what others are saying around you. So I think that's a really good advice to all those founders who might be thinking like that during their downtime. George, do you have any questions for Alex before we wrap up for today's episode?
No, but I want to take up a point that Alex made for the people that listen into this podcast, and he made a very valid point. You need to be able to disassociate from other people's small-mindedness. You need to be able to disassociate from other people's fear. You need to be able to disassociate from the spectator syndrome. And the spectator syndrome, as I explained to you the other day, Saurabh, usually the person that can tell the batsman or the wicketkeeper or the fielder in Test cricket, the one that can usually be the most critical, is the guy that's sitting in the stand as a spectator. So you need to be able to disassociate all of those people so that they don't stop you from following what you can achieve. On the other side of the coin, you need to be able to disassociate from your own ego so that when you get genuine critiquing, when you get genuine input, that you don't decide, oh, what does he know? What does she know? And then you discount it. And there's a saying, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so in the beginning, for entrepreneurs and for people that are founders of companies and people that are in business and in life, you need to be able to work out that one I'm not going to pay a lot of attention to. That one I will pay a lot of attention to. And this one, yeah, I'll take it either way. So I think it's a very good point that Alex raised, and I didn't want to miss out on people watching this. The better you understand yourself and the better you know who you are and what you stand for, the less impact other people's shortcomings will make on you.
And also, I'll just add to that, the clearer it becomes when criticism is valid and when it's not.
100%. 100%.
Well, that's a fantastic wrap to today's episode, George, and also Alex. I think we have learned a lot in the climate space specifically. And I haven't chatted to George regarding our in-person event when we met on Friday. But we are supposed to have a chat on that as well. And if we are hosting that this year, Alex, you are definitely invited to that. And we would love to see, how you can kind of contribute in that event, either as a speaker or even as a person who is just coming there and raising some good questions, because I feel that the space that you're working in is pretty fast growing. And people need more knowledge sharing in this space, because people sometimes they speak out of less research and lack of knowledge that they have, or they have not gone through things, or they don't have enough experience in the space. So that's really good. And I also look forward to chatting with you during our runs. So looking forward to staying in touch with you, and thank you so much for your participation.
Thanks for having me, both Saurabh and George. It was great to have a bit of a chat. I hope I didn't waffle on too much, and hope I was more or less to the point. And yeah, love to come to your next events, and definitely would love to stay in touch.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.